Hello everyone, my name is Allie. Today I'd like to talk about my favorites for September 2020 for the environmental events and things that took place or things that I learned about this month that I think are important to share. My main reason for creating this video is to focus on some of the positive things that are happening with the environment. I think it's so easy to just get sucked in and overwhelmed with all the things that are happening and all of the issues that are coming to light and some of the things that each of us have to live with every day as a result of climate change and global warming. But I think it is important that we reflect on things that are positive that are happening, because there are people that are working day in and day out to make positive change. And I think it's important that we notice these people, recognize these achievements and have them serve as inspiration for all of us and examples of ways that we can all do better and we can all make positive impact and change, no matter where we are, no matter our age or any other kind of restraints that we might have on us. Let's jump into it. For my first favorite, I'd like to mention Mya Rose Craig. She is a young woman who is an environmental activist, and she is really making waves and bringing to light a lot of issues that some people might not notice or might not have any prior experience with. The event that I'm speaking about in particular was her protest for the Arctic ice melting. She went out into the Arctic and held out a sign and sat on one of the melting ice pieces to protest. So on September 15th, the ice cap area, the surface area of ice to ocean ratio, actually dropped to one of the lowest points in the 50 years that they've been recording that surface area. So on the 15th, it dropped down to 3.74 million square kilometers, and that point had only been reduced or only lower in 2012. Other than that, in the last 50 years, they've had of recording that data, they've had higher points of area versus that September 15th ratio. So that provides us a metric, and metrics are important when you're reflecting on environmental things, because it's very easy to say, oh, we'll be more sustainable, or we're gonna make a 50% effort or something like that. That metric is difficult to grasp. There's nothing tangible there with those kind of metrics. However, when you look at data from this Arctic area, it's easy to see specifically the area numbers have changed, and that metric is important for us to reflect on and actually understand and grasp the kinds of changes that are happening in the environment. So I wanted to give a shout out to Mya. I think it's amazing that she and her bravery is inspirational for all of us. She went out there in the freezing cold and she stood up for what she believed in, and for me, that's really inspirational, really, really wonderful to see. And so that was a favorite number one. So my second favorite has to do with the Samla wind power plant in Norway. So they conducted a study that determined that if you paint one of the wings of the wind turbine, so as you can see here in this picture, if you paint one of the wings or one of the wind turbines in black as opposed to the typical white, they found that it actually has a wonderful impact on the mortality rates of birds. So basically the wind turbines spin, and those, as you can see, those three prongs spin around. And unfortunately, the birds in the area are known to crash into those wind turbines, and that can be really catastrophic to a bird. It's the same as a bird crashing into a window of a building or a sky rise or something like that. So what they found, in order to mediate some of that, because obviously they noticed that they have dead birds all around in the windmill farms. So this study where they painted one of the turbines black actually found that they're able to reduce the fatality of birds up to 70% for some species, which is a fantastic finding, because this is a low-cost solution. That's something that's important when we're talking about environmental sustainability. It's not just enough to come up or to explain something that will be more renewable or more sustainable. It's about making it feasible for the people that are supposed to be implementing these technologies, or making it feasible and cost effective, so that the people that have to purchase these goods or have to utilize this material or energy that we're producing, it has to be cost effective. So that's something that's really positive and really wonderful about this finding, is that just painting one of the turbines would create such a wonderful impact without having to be high cost, without having to redo the whole technology or take down the windmills that are already in place and already working. It would just be a simple modification. So for me, that is really a favorite, and that's really something wonderful to see that's happening, because this is really an example of just thinking one or two steps ahead and implementing sustainability in a way that doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be super complicated. It can just be simple, thoughtful solutions. My favorite number 3 for the September month has to do with the National Park Foundation. So in 3 national parks, they instituted the Don't Fill the Landfills initiative, which means that in these 3 national parks, Denali, Grand Teton, and Yosemite National Park, they implemented an additional bin for waste. So they created extra bins for recycling and extra bins for composting of waste, as opposed to just having a trash which would go to a landfill. They implemented about 1,000 of these new compost and recycling bins or options for the people that go into the parks. And they actually found that they implemented this change in 3 separate parks. And for all 3 of the parks, they found that recycling increased by 27%, which is excellent. Even just having the option to recycle, people were able to engage in that option and able to contribute to the environmental situation in terms of just filling a landfill, a nearby landfill, just adding more stuff. Just by adding an option, people were able to contribute to the recycling as opposed to just the landfill waste. In the Tenton National Park specifically, they partnered with local farmers to receive the composting. So people that have food waste, if you go to the park for a picnic or for lunch and you have food waste, they had a composting bin specifically for that. And then partnering with the local farmers, they were able to take that composting and utilize it for the agriculture, which is a wonder. Compost can be an excellent source of nutrients for agricultural land. So that's an example of the national park really working with local and sustainable forces to create positive change. People, when they saw that there were other alternatives with regards to composting or recycling as opposed to just putting into the waste, which will go into a landfill, people were able to learn about the alternatives. They were able to learn the options when it comes to waste management and how not everything just has to go to a landfill. Those lessons that people could learn just by community education at these parks are invaluable, because they take those lessons home with them and they're able to implement, if they choose so, they're able to implement that knowledge and that practice into their daily life, which makes an everlasting chain of events and everlasting change, not just when they're at the parks, but when they go home, they take those lessons home with them. For that reason, I think that the Don't Fill the Landfill initiative, creating composting and recycling options at these 3 parks, was really a wonderful change, and that is why I chose them as favorites number 3 for this month. My 4th favorite for this month is the Barakah nuclear energy plant in Al Dhafra of the Emirates of Abu Dhabi. So this nuclear power plant is the first of any kind of sustainable energy production that has ever happened in the United Arab Emirates. The first of the 4 reactors was able to get up and running safely and without complication. So this is important because the entire nuclear power plant, this one specifically, has 4 different reactors, and one of them is online successfully. The other 3 they will be opening them up gradually to ensure safety. Anyways, so once the 4 reactors are online, this will account for up to 25% of the United Arab Emirates' total energy production. So this is a huge improvement. This is really good sign because we're seeing more and more countries are really making that shift into sustainable energy production. And it's really just about these little percentages. It's as I stated in the beginning, it can be extremely overwhelming to hear of all of the problems that are happening and everything that needs to be done. But it is important that we reflect on things that have been done and making progress as opposed to perfection, focusing on the progress. And this really does show a huge amount of progress. And so I just really wanted to give a shout out to that nuclear power plant coming up and running. I'm so happy that they were able to get started in a safe way and that everything went smoothly. One other thing that I wanted to add with regards to the Baraka nuclear energy facility is that once all 4 reactors are up and running, they expect to have about 20 million tons of carbon emission reduced from what would be emitted if they continued just with the coal production of energy. So they're going to have a 21 million ton less carbon emission happening as a result of this nuclear power plant. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful sign and really something to be celebrated. And for my last favorite for this video, I wanted to talk about the New Zealand Prime Minister's announcement about going 100% sustainable energy in New Zealand by 2030. So currently in New Zealand, they have about 84% of their energy production coming from sustainable sources, for example, hydropower. But the Prime Minister recently made an announcement that she would actually like to switch over to 100% sustainability in terms of energy production for New Zealand by 2030, which I think is just a wonderful thing to look forward to. Alright, so those are my favorites for the month of September 2020. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you think I missed out on anything, please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your favorites with regards to the environment for this month.